The air in the cantina was thick with smoke and the smell of alien drinks. Dim lights flickered over tables filled with creatures from across the galaxy. In the darkest corner sat a figure that made even the toughest smugglers look away. Zekhar was huge, even for a Vorthak warrior. His shell-like skin was covered in scars from 100 battles. Forearms ended in claws that could tear through metal. His 6 eyes glowed red in the darkness. Most beings gave him plenty of space. The Vorthak were known across the galaxy as the fiercest fighters. They had conquered dozens of worlds and never lost a war. Until now. A young Drakmari reporter named Siltek walked into the cantina. His green scales shimmered as he moved between the tables. He had been searching for Zekhar for weeks. The old warrior was famous throughout the galaxy as the greatest Vorthak fighter still alive. Now rumors said he refused to fight humans anymore. Some even said he was afraid of them. Silthek approached the table slowly. "Are you Zekhar the Destroyer?" The massive alien looked up from his drink. His compound eyes focused on the small reporter. "That name died 3 years ago. Now I am just Zekhar. I am Silthek from Galaxy News Network. I want to ask you about the humans." Zekhar laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Another reporter. You are the 5th one this month. Let me guess what you want to know. You want to hear about their weapons, their ships, how they fight dirty, how they never give up. Well, yes. The galaxy wants to know why the mighty Vorthak Empire is losing to such a young species." The warrior took a long drink from his glass. The liquid inside glowed blue and smoked. "Sit down, little reporter. I will tell you about humans. But not what you expect to hear." Silthek sat down quickly. He pulled out a small recording device and placed it on the table. "Tell me everything." Zekhar stared at the device for a long moment. "You want to know about humans? Every species in this galaxy fears them for the wrong reasons. They think it is their weapons, their ships, their numbers, fools. Then what should we fear about them?" The old warrior's eyes grew distant. "I first met humans 3 years ago at the Battle of Proxima Station. My fleet was ordered to destroy their supply base. It should have been easy. We had 50 ships. They had 12. Silthek leaned forward. This was exactly the kind of story he wanted. The battle started like any other. We came out of hyperspace and began our attack. The humans fought back, but they were clearly losing. Their ships were smaller and weaker than ours. I commanded the lead attack wing. Victory was certain." Zekhar paused and took another drink. His hands shook slightly as he held the glass. Then something happened that I had never seen before in all my years of war. One of our ships, the Drakthar, had been damaged in the fighting. It was falling toward the planet below. But it was not empty. It carried 3,000 Vorthak civilians who had been evacuated from another battle. What did the humans do? That is what I could not understand. Commander Jake Murphy was leading their fleet. Instead of pressing his attack while we were distracted, he did something impossible. He ordered his ships to help rescue our people. Silthek blinked in confusion. "They helped you?" "Not just helped. They risked everything." Murphy took his flagship, the Earth's Pride, and flew it right into our formation. His ship was taking heavy fire from our defensive guns, but he did not turn away. He matched course with the falling transport and began evacuating our civilians. The reporter's recording device hummed quietly as Zekhar continued his story. I watched through my ship's view screen as human soldiers carried Vorthak children to safety. These were the same humans we had been trying to kill just minutes before. They were saving our young ones while our own guns fired at them. Why would they do that? Zekhar's laugh was bitter. That is what I asked Murphy when I contacted him on the communication channel. His ship was burning. Half his crew was dead or wounded. But he was still coordinating the rescue. I demanded to know why he would risk his people for our civilians. What did he say? He said something that still haunts me. Because they are not soldiers. They are just people who need help. Just like that, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. The cantina around them had grown quieter. Other patrons were listening to the conversation, though they pretended not to. The rescue took 4 hours. 4 hours where both fleets stopped fighting and worked together to save lives. I watched Vorthak and human engineers work side by side to repair the damaged transport. I saw human medics treating our wounded with the same care they gave their own people. Silthek was writing notes as fast as he could. How many were saved? All of them. Every single civilian on that ship. But the cost was heavy. Murphy's ship was destroyed in the final evacuation run. He stayed behind to make sure the last transport got away safely. The Earth's pride exploded just as the final shuttle reached safety. And Murphy? Dead. Along with 67 of his crew. They died saving people they had never met. People whose species had been trying to kill them. The reporter looked up from his notes. That is an amazing story of heroism, but I do not understand why this would make humans terrifying. Zekar finished his drink and signaled for another. Because, little reporter, that was just the beginning. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about war. What happened next? Word of the rescue spread through both fleets, then through both armies, then through both species. Suddenly, Vorthak soldiers were asking questions they had never asked before. If humans could show mercy to their enemies, why could we not do the same? If they could risk their lives for strangers, what did that say about us? The warrior's new drink arrived. He stared into the glowing liquid. Within a month, I started receiving reports of Vorthak units refusing orders to attack human civilian targets. Soldiers who had fought without question for decades were suddenly unable to fire on enemy hospitals and schools. The rescue at Proxima Station had planted something in their minds. Something dangerous. Dangerous how? Zekhar looked directly at the reporter. It made them remember that there was another way to live, another way to fight, another way to be. The cantina fell completely silent. Even the background music had stopped. That, little reporter, is why humans terrify the galaxy. Not because they are strong, but because they make us weak. Siltek stared at his recording device, making sure it was still working. The story Zekhar was telling was unlike anything he had expected. You said that was just the beginning. What happened after Proxima Station? The old warrior ordered. Another drink. His massive hands wrapped around the glass like it was a toy. The High Command was furious about what happened at Proxima. They said Murphy's actions were a trick, a way to make us soft. They ordered all fleet commanders to ignore any human requests for mercy. Did you follow those orders? Zekhar's 6. Eyes dimmed. For a while, yes. I tried to go back to the old ways, to see humans as just another enemy to destroy. But then came the siege of New Geneva. The cantina around them seemed to lean in closer. Other aliens at nearby tables had stopped, pretending they were not listening. New Geneva was a human colony world, small, only about 50,000 people living there, but it had strategic value. Our generals decided to make an example of it, show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the Vorthak Empire. Silthek wrote quickly. You were part of the attack force? I led it. 3 battle fleets and a full ground assault division. The humans had only a small defense force, a few old ships and maybe 2,000 soldiers. The battle lasted 6 days. Zekhar paused to drink. His hands were shaking more now. On the 4th day, my strike team broke through their defensive lines. We captured a human outpost on the northern continent. 12 prisoners, including their commanding officer, Lieutenant Lisa Grant. What was special about her? Nothing at first. She was young, maybe 25 years old in human terms. Brown hair, green eyes, small even for a human. When we brought her and her squad to our temporary base, she did not beg for her life like most prisoners do. She just watched us with those green eyes. The reporter looked up from his notes. What did you do with the prisoners? Standard procedure was immediate execution, but I wanted information first. How many humans were left? Where were their weapon supplies? How long could they hold out? I had Kliktar, my youngest soldier, guard them while I prepared for interrogation. Zekhar's voice grew quieter. Kliktar was barely past his first molting. Only 17 cycles. Old. He was eager to prove himself in battle. During the fighting that day, he had been hit by plasma fire. Bad burns on his left side. Our medics had looked at him and moved on. Too many other wounded to treat. They said he would either heal or die on his own. And the human prisoners saw this? Grant noticed Kliktar was in pain. At first, I thought she was planning to escape, but then she started talking to him, softly, in basic galactic common. She asked if she could look at his wounds. Silthek stopped writing. She wanted to help her guard? That is what I thought too. I told Kliktar to be careful, that it was probably a trick. But the boy was hurting badly, and Grant seemed sincere, so I allowed it. The warrior took a long drink before continuing. What happened next changed everything. Grant took supplies from her own medical kit, human supplies that she might need if she was wounded, and she began treating Kliktar's burns. Not quickly, not roughly. She worked for over an hour, cleaning the wounds, applying medicine, bandaging the damaged areas. Why would she waste her supplies on an enemy? That is exactly what I asked her. When she was finished, I demanded to know why she would help the soldier guarding her. Her answer made no sense to me then. What did she say? Zekhar looked directly at the reporter. She said, because he is just a kid and he is in pain. Nothing more. No strategic reason. No attempt to gain favor. Just that simple statement. The cantina had grown completely silent now. Even the bartender had stopped cleaning glasses to listen. I did not understand. In Vorthak society, weakness is not tolerated. The wounded who cannot fight are left behind. It makes the group stronger. But this human had just made herself weaker to help an enemy who was guarding her. How did your soldier react? Kliktar was confused too. No enemy had ever shown him kindness. In our culture, enemies are to be destroyed completely. But here was this small human female using her own supplies to ease his pain. He started asking her questions about human medicine, about why she became a soldier, about her family back on Earth. Siltek was writing as fast as he could. What did she tell him? She had joined the military to be a medic. Her dream was to help people, not hurt them. She talked about her younger brother back home, how he was studying to be a doctor too, how their parents had taught them that all life was precious. Zekhar paused and looked around the cantina. Several aliens had moved closer to hear better. Over the next 2 days, while we prepared for the final assault on the human colony, something strange happened. My soldiers began visiting the prison area, not to interrogate the humans, just to listen to Grant talk. What did she talk about? Everything. Her homeworld, human customs, their beliefs about war and peace. But mostly she talked about healing. She had Kliktar helping her treat other wounded soldiers, human and Vorthak alike. She showed him techniques our medics did not know. The old warrior's voice grew even quieter. On the 6th day, when we received orders to execute all prisoners before the final assault, half my unit refused to follow them. Silthek looked up in shock. Vorthak soldiers refused orders? For the first time in our recorded history, they said they could not kill someone who had shown them such kindness. Kliktar actually stood in front of Grant when I came to carry out the execution order. This boy who had worshipped me as a hero was now protecting a human prisoner. What did you do? I stood there with my weapon raised, looking at this young soldier I had trained from childhood, and I realized I could not pull the trigger either, not because I was weak, but because Grant had shown me something I had forgotten existed. What was that? Zekhar finished his drink and set the glass down carefully. That mercy is not weakness. That helping others, even enemies, requires more strength than destroying them. That maybe, just maybe, there was a better way to live than constant war. Did you let them live? I did more than that. When Captain Ben Rodriguez contacted our forces offering medical aid to our wounded, I was the first commander to accept. The human ground forces and my strike team worked together for the first time in the war. The warrior stood up slowly. That is when I learned the most terrifying truth about humans. They do not just show mercy once. They keep showing it, over and over, until it changes everything around them. Silthek looked up at the massive alien. Where is Lieutenant Grant now? Zekhar smiled, the first genuine smile the reporter had seen from him. She runs a medical center on Kepler Station. Humans and Vorthak work there together. Kliktar is her assistant. My former soldier now saves lives instead of taking them. And you? Why did you stop fighting? The old warrior looked around the cantina. One more time. Because once you see that there is another way to live, you cannot go back to the old way. The humans did not defeat me with weapons. They defeated me with hope. Silthek checked his recording device again. The story was getting more incredible with each part. You mentioned hope. But surely there must have been more battles, more violence. The war did not end after New Geneva. Zekhar nodded slowly. You are right. The war continued for 2 more years. But everything was different after that. The High Command was losing control. Too many soldiers were refusing orders. Too many commanders were making deals with human forces instead of fighting them. What did the High Command do? They tried to fix the problem by sending their most loyal units to fight humans. Units that had never seen human mercy. They thought fresh soldiers would not be affected by what they called human weakness. The old warrior signaled for another drink. That is when they sent my fleet to intercept the colony ship Tethmara. A colony ship? That does not sound like a military target. It was not. The Tethmara was a massive civilian transport. Over 2 million Vorthak refugees fleeing the border worlds. Families, children, elderly citizens. They were running from the fighting, trying to reach neutral space. Siltek wrote quickly. Why would the High Command target civilians? Because they were fleeing instead of fighting. The High Command saw this as cowardice. They ordered my fleet to intercept the ship and force the refugees to return to the war zones. If they refused, we were to destroy the ship as an example. Did you follow those orders? Zekhar was quiet for a long moment. I tried to. My fleet caught up with the Tethmar at the edge of the neutral zone. The colony ship was old and slow. It had no weapons, no escorts. It should have been easy to force them to turn around. What went wrong? Everything. The Tethmara's engines had been pushed too hard during the escape. As we approached, they suffered a catastrophic failure. The ship lost power and began breaking apart. 2 million people were about to die in the cold of space. The reporter looked up from his notes. What did you do? I contacted the ship's captain, told him to prepare for evacuation to my vessels. We would save who we could and complete our mission later. But the Tethmara was too big and my ships were too small. We could maybe save 50,000 people. The rest would die. Siltek shook his head. That is terrible, but I still do not understand how humans are involved in this story. Zekhar's eyes grew distant again. The human destroyer New Hope was patrolling the border. Captain Amy Foster was conducting routine sweeps for pirates. When she received the Tethmara's distress signal, she responded immediately. Even though you were at war? Even though we were at war? Even though her single ship was outnumbered 10-1 by my fleet? Even though those refugees were the same species that had been killing her people for 3 years? The cantina had filled up as the evening wore on, but somehow it seemed quieter than before. Word was spreading that the famous Zekhar was telling his story. Foster's ship arrived just as the Tethmara was splitting in half. She could have stayed back and watched. She could have attacked my fleet while we were distracted. Instead, she did something that still makes no sense to me. What did she do? She opened a communication channel to my flagship. I expected threats or demands for surrender. Instead, she said 6 words that changed everything. Do you need help with the rescue? Silthek stopped writing. She offered to help? Not just offered. When I told her the situation was hopeless, that we could not save everyone, she refused to accept that answer. Foster contacted someone she called Chief Engineer Sam Collins. Within minutes, they had a plan. What kind of plan? The New Hope had advanced rescue equipment, systems designed to handle exactly this kind of disaster. But there was a problem. The ship was too small to carry 2 million people. However, they could keep the Tethmara's life support working, long enough for more ships to arrive. Zekhar paused to drink. His hands were steadier now, as if telling the story was helping him somehow. Collins volunteered to transfer to the dying colony ship. He would work in the engine room using human technology to keep the power grid stable. It was incredibly dangerous. The ship was breaking apart around him. And Captain Foster agreed to this. She did more than agree. She ordered her entire crew to assist with the rescue. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak technicians. Human medics treated injured refugees. Human pilots flew shuttles between the ships, carrying civilians to safety. The reporter was writing as fast as he could. How long did the rescue take? 18 hours. 18 hours of non-stop work while the Tethamara slowly died around us. Collins stayed in the engine room the entire time, keeping the lights on and the air flowing. Every few hours he would report over the communication system. Power holding steady. Keep the shuttles coming. Did you save everyone? Zekhar smiled, but it was a sad smile. Almost everyone. We saved 1,997,431 people. We lost less than 3,000. It was the largest rescue operation in galactic history. What happened to Collins? The old warrior's voice became very quiet. He stayed too long. The engine room was flooding with radiation. He knew he was dying, but he would not leave his post. In the final hour, when the last shuttle was loading the last group of refugees, the power grid began to fail. Silthek leaned forward. And? Collins made a choice. He manually overrode the safety systems and used his own body to complete the electrical circuit. The lights stayed on long enough for the final shuttle to reach safety. Then the Tethamara exploded. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the background music had stopped. Before he died, Collins left a message on the ship's communication log. He said, "Tell my daughter Katie that Daddy kept his promise to help people." That was all. No grand speeches, no demands for recognition, just a father's love for his child. How did the refugees react? They were stunned. Here was a human who had given his life to save people he had never met. People whose species had been trying to kill his people. When the Vorthak reinforcements arrived 6 hours later, they found something unprecedented. What did they find? Humans and Vorthaks working together, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing grief for the man who had saved them all. The refugees refused to be separated from their human rescuers. They demanded to know why they were fighting a war against people who would die to save them. Zekhar finished his drink and looked directly at the reporter. That is when I realized the truth. Humans do not just show mercy to individuals. They show mercy to entire civilizations. They make us remember what we could be if we chose to be better. What happened to you after that? I resigned my commission. I could not continue fighting people who had shown me what real strength looks like. Real strength is not conquering your enemies. Real strength is saving them. Silthek looked at his notes. Pages and pages of incredible stories. But something still did not make sense. These are amazing stories of human kindness. But I still do not understand why this would terrify the galaxy. Surely compassion is a good thing. Zekhar laughed, but it was not a bitter laugh this time. You are young, little reporter. You do not understand how the galaxy really works? Let me explain why the Galactic Council is more afraid of human mercy than they ever were, of human weapons. I am listening. Every species in this galaxy reached the stars the same way. We became strong by becoming cruel. We conquered our homeworlds by deciding that some people mattered more than others. We built our empires by choosing power over kindness. The old warrior looked around the cantina. Look around you. See how the different species sit apart from each other? How the strong species get the best tables while the weak ones hide in the corners. This is how the galaxy has always worked. Silthek followed his gaze. It was true. The massive Kronar species sat near the center of the room. The small Pikik species huddled together near the back. Everyone knew their place. Now let me tell you what happened after the rescue of the Tethamara. Word spread through the galaxy like wildfire. 2 million Vorthak refugees were alive because a human had died to save them. The story was told on every world and every language, and people were inspired. People were more than inspired, they were changed. On Vorthak Prime, our homeworld, something happened that had never occurred in 10,000 years of recorded history. The lower castes began refusing to work. Silthek blinked in surprise. They went on strike. More than that. They demanded to be treated as equals. They said if humans could treat Vorthak refugees as worth saving, then Vorthak leaders should treat their own people the same way. The entire social structure began to collapse. The reporter was writing frantically. What did the government do? They tried to restore order with force, but the soldiers refused to fire on the protesters. Too many of them had heard the stories about human mercy. They began asking why they should oppress their own people when humans showed kindness even to their enemies. Zekhar paused to order another drink. It was not just the Vorthak Empire. The same thing started happening everywhere. On crystalline worlds, the lower castes began demanding equal rights. On Drakmari colonies, the slave workers began organizing for freedom. Because of human stories? Because humans proved that another way was possible. For thousands of years, every species told the same lie, that cruelty was natural, that the strong must rule the weak, that mercy was weakness. Then humans came along and showed us it was all a choice. The cantina around them seemed to be listening to every word. Aliens from dozens of species had gathered closer, their drinks forgotten. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 6 months after the Tethmara rescue. I was there as a witness. They were terrified. Not of human ships or human weapons. They were terrified of human ideas. What did they decide? They declared humans a threat to galactic stability. Not because humans were violent, but because they were making everyone else question the old ways. They authorized the Total War Protocol. Siltek looked up from his notes. Total War Protocol? Complete extermination of the human species, not because they were evil, but because they were good. Because their goodness was destroying the foundations of galactic civilization. The reporter's scales turned pale. That seems like an extreme reaction to kindness. Is it? Think about what human compassion really means. If humans are right, if mercy is stronger than cruelty, then every empire in this galaxy is built on a lie. Every ruler who oppresses his people is wrong. Every caste system, every slavery law, every law that says some beings matter more than others becomes impossible to defend. Zekhar's voice grew stronger. Humans do not just save individual lives. They save the idea that life itself has value. Every time they show mercy to an enemy, they prove that enemies do not have to remain enemies. Every time they risk their lives for strangers, they prove that strangers are not really strangers. But surely this is progress. Surely making the galaxy more compassionate is a good thing. For most people, yes, but not for those in power. The Galactic Council represents the rulers of hundreds of worlds. Their power depends on keeping people divided, on making them believe that war is inevitable, that some species are naturally superior, that mercy is a luxury they cannot afford. The old warrior stood up slowly. His massive frame cast a shadow over the table. 3 years ago, I was the perfect Vorthak soldier. I believed in strength above all else. I thought compassion was weakness. I was ready to die for the glory of the Empire. What changed? I met humans, and they showed me that everything I believed was wrong. They showed me that real strength comes from protecting the weak, not crushing them. That real courage means showing mercy to those who have hurt you. That real honor means choosing to help rather than to harm. Siltek finished his notes and looked up at the towering alien. So that is why you stopped fighting? Because humans convinced you that war was wrong? No, little reporter. I stopped fighting because humans convinced me that peace was possible. There is a difference. Around them, the cantina had grown completely silent. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy were listening to every word. The war against humanity is not about territory or resources. It is about the future of galactic civilization. The Council wants to destroy humans before their ideas spread too far, before too many people start believing that there is a better way to live. And do you think they will succeed? Zekhar smiled. Look around you, reporter. Look at all these different species sitting together, listening to the same story. A year ago, most of them would not have spoken to each other. Now they are united by a common understanding. Siltek looked around the cantina. It was true. Aliens who had been natural enemies were now sitting at the same tables, sharing drinks and conversations. The Council has already lost. Human compassion is spreading faster than their fleets can travel. On 1,000 worlds, people are choosing kindness over cruelty. Former enemies are becoming friends. Old hatreds are being forgotten. The reporter packed up his recording device. Where will you go now? To the human colony ship Tomorrow's Dream. They are building something new there. A place where all species can live together as equals, where children grow up believing that differences make us stronger, not weaker. Zekhar dropped some coins on the table and turned to leave. Tell your readers the truth, little reporter. Humans do not terrify the galaxy because they are strong. They terrify the galaxy because they make us want to be better than we are. As the old warrior walked toward the exit, aliens throughout the cantina stood up in respect. Some even applauded. At the door, Zekhar turned back one last time. The age of empires is ending. The age of compassion has begun. And no army in the galaxy can stop an idea whose time has come. With that, he stepped out into the star-filled night, leaving behind a cantina full of beings who would never see the universe the same way again.